Hello and happy Sunday to everyone. This is Always Right with Jeff and Steven. I am Jeff. That is Steven. And apparently, I sound pretty bad today. I stayed home from worship. I've got something that I think might be contagious. So I'm in my comfy clothes. Um, but I would not have missed this. I'm doing all right. So we decided to soldier on. Besides, there are some crazy, crazy stories to talk about this week. Steven, what has been going on?
Do you watch any of the Minion movies? Despicable
I
Me and the Minion
I've
movies?
seen the first two Despicable Me's, and I've seen the Minion movies. Yeah, the Minion
I
movie,
feel like
the
everybody
first one.
this week was a minion. I felt like everybody in the world was a minion, and they were just pointing at the sky like the minions do, going, "Balloon!"
Okay.
Because that's all anybody could talk about. Is all they could talk
Yeah,
about was this Chinese spy balloon.
yeah. So it is the top story. Like clearly, there's nothing else that has gotten quite as much attention as this. And I'm starting to hear things that I need to dig deeper into. Um,
Sure.
down my conspiracy theory rabbit holes. But um, it seems pretty cut and dry when we first look at it.
Yeah.
So, for those now, my wife had not heard about this story. My wife does not get on social media much. So I was talking to her parents yesterday. We were visiting them, and I was talking to her dad about it, and she was like, "What are y'all talking about a balloon for?" So, if you're unaware, and for whatever reason are listening to this podcast, um, on Wednesday, I believe it was reported that there was a balloon
It was
floating.
first spotted by a civilian. The first
Yes,
civilian spotting. Now this is important. The first civilian spotting
right,
was February 1st over Billings, Montana.
right.
That was not when the government first saw it. The
This is
government,
when,
according to the administration, they were made aware of it as early as like January 28th. So
right,
they had known about it for several days
right,
concerning this spy balloon, and that's what it is. It is a spy balloon. It is a surveillance piece of equipment from the Communist Party of China is what is going on. They are trying to get more state secrets. So just to lay down the facts, you can Google most of this. It's very easy to see. Um, First spotted by a civilian over in Billings, Montana, which we'll get into how important Montana is shortly. On February 1st, administration became aware of it. According to Bloomberg News, the administration became aware of it as early as January 28th, possibly earlier. The official statement coming out of the People's Republic of China was that it was a civilian weather balloon that had blown off course. Now, just in case you're wondering, Billings, Montana is 5,000 miles away from China. So I know that high atmospheric winds are crazy, but if they're so technologically advanced, it shouldn't have blown 5,000 miles off course. Biden administration stated that they weren't originally going to shoot it down over fear that debris would fall on the populace, and then eventually, I believe it was yesterday, day before yesterday, something like that. They shot it down over the coast of the Carolinas, and they used an F-22 Raptor. It was awesome. If
yeah,
you've ever seen an F-22 Raptor, it is awesome. And so, immediately people were like, well, that's a waste of government resources. And, we saw all the memes come out about people getting their shotguns out and whatever.
right,
The reason it didn't come to the South is okay, small arms munition. I don't care if you have a 50 cal, it's not shooting something down that is 10 miles above the earth. I mean,
right,
that's almost out of the atmosphere. I mean, it is 10 miles. You're not going to have a 50 cal that's going to shoot that way. And then I saw other people going, oh, it's a waste of government resources. Just send up a helicopter. I hate to tell you, an Apache can't fly at 60,000 feet. So you have to get something like an F-22 Raptor. You should
right.
watch that video. It's awesome because they used a Sidewinder missile and you can see it flying and then it all blows up. I do not buy the administration's reasoning for not shooting it down earlier
Yeah, let's
whatsoever.
yeah, we need to go through all of the steps in this chain of the story, like what happened when we knew what we knew, and address all the lies as they come. So,
Sure.
what we know happened is that this balloon came from China through Alaska
Mhm.
into Canada, and the Biden administration became aware of it when it was in Canada, thanks to aid from Canadian forces. Um,
There is a rumor that they became aware of it whenever it was over the Aleutian Islands in Alaska.
yeah, that could
That
also
that
be
was
the case.
that was given by a high-ranking administration official speaking on the terms of anonymity kind of thing.
So, and we don't have to. I don't want to spend a lot of time on it, but let's address the lie that this was a meteorological tool that went off course. The Chinese party lies about literally everything.
Literally, but
Um,
well, and frankly, I don't care if that's the truth.
right.
Even
Yeah.
if that's the truth, I don't care. You should have shot it down anyway, sooner.
Right.
Yeah, so
So that's not worth the paper it was printed on. And now let's address the concern that we did not want to shoot it over populated areas for fear of the debris. I don't
because Montana is so populated.
I am not well traveled, but I've
Oh,
heard stories about Alaska, northern Canada, and Montana.
yeah.
I There's not a cow in Montana that would have been worried about it. Like no one would be worried about being hit by something in any of those areas. And let's it started we became aware of it in Montana. That's where it entered into the lower 48 states of the United States. It traveled from Montana to the East Coast.
Yeah.
I don't know what trajectory, but it was like Thursday or Friday when they figured out the direction of the balloon can be controlled.
See, and that's the other part of this. Like people go, well, why would you shoot down a civilian balloon? They found out. I didn't put that in our notes, and I apologize, but it became the Biden officials became aware that it was maneuverable, and that's
Right.
all that they would say is that it was maneuverable. The minute they found out it was maneuverable, F-22. Because all right, so why was this balloon around? What the claim out of the administration and a lot of the lefties that I see trying to prop up the administration on this is, well, they couldn't gather anything that they don't already have. Do you know what is in Montana? It's called nuclear missiles. It
Yeah.
is where we house a large number of Minutemen nuclear missiles. They're called Minutemen because, like the Minutemen militia of old, they were made to be ready at a minute's notice. And so they were, this wasn't an accident that the course that it was going, they were purposefully going after state secrets. And okay, say they can't. Say they can't get anything new from the surveillance that they had. Shoot it down anyway. Send a message. Send a
Right.
message that you will not interrupt American sovereign airspace in any way, shape, or form. Um, I am not well traveled. However, I have been out west a number of times and been to Alaska a number of times, and I can confirm everything that Jeff just said. Uh, Shoot it down. You would have a better ability to recover it on the ground rather than the sea. You would get more technology if you recover it on the ground rather than at sea, because it's going to hit sea and there's a lot of pieces that aren't going to float. They're going to go down, and you're going to want to recover that technology. So just all in all, a failure by our administration. The other lies you said we were going to talk about the lies that have come out. Other lies that have come out, even reported by right wing media sources like Fox News on Fox News Sunday. Reporter Tomlin said that an alleged Chinese spy balloon flew over the U.S. under the previous administration, never previously acknowledged publicly. Well, Donald Trump immediately got out and did his truth social thing, saying that was not true. and that he described it as misinformation. Several former Trump officials responded to the report by saying that they had never been briefed on a Chinese spy balloon flying over the U.S. Former Director of National Intelligence John Ratcliffe said on Fox News' Sunday Morning Features that the report was not true. Several other top officials, and we could name all the names, people that aren't even friendly to Trump anymore, people like John Bolton and Robert O'Brien, all these people, they all said, no, that's not true. We were never briefed on it. That didn't happen. That's a lie. So the thing about, well, this happened under Trump too. No, it didn't. No, it didn't. Because, I mean, I don't know a lot about Donald Trump, but I know he has an ego. And I know if he gets a chance to show off American military might against the Chinese, he's going to take it. So I don't believe for a second that this happened under the Trump administration. I believe that I 100% believe that the Biden administration knew about this thing when it was over in Alaska in conjunction with the Canadian military, which, in case you're wondering what the Canadian military is, it's the American military. In conjunction with the Canadian military, they could have easily taken this thing down in Alaska, over Canada, before it ever got to lower at 48, before it ever give any compromising surveillance on our nuclear capabilities or anything like that. And they just didn't do it because they are feckless, spineless, useless politicians.
So, yes. Let's go over the concern that you just addressed in that this may have happened under the Trump administration, and we're not sure that that's true. What I'm hearing very recently, I haven't had time to research it, so this is with a grain of salt, and I'm not convinced of anything yet, is that this sort of thing has been going on for decades because of a treaty called the Open Skies Treaty put into place under Dwight Eisenhower. The premise of the Open Skies Treaty is that nation states allow limited surveillance from other nation states as a measure to reduce the threat of war. The argument being that if you have a little bit more information about what your enemy has, you're not as panicked and hot on the button. I, again, have not had a chance to research any of this. And that Trump probably, if it did happen under Trump's administration, was not made aware of this because it was kind of a standard procedure kind of thing. Again, haven't heard anything. It seems a little bit sketch for me, but it's from a source that I typically trust. So I really, your country's do hinky stuff all the time. I am of the alignment that if you send a foreign vessel into our controlled airspace, we now own that property and can do what.
Well, everything you said, everything that you said was 100% accurate. There is a free zone up in the higher atmospheres that that is allowed, in my humble opinion, that is outdated and it needs to be abolished because camera technology has come a long way since Ike was in the office.
Sure.
Since Eisenhower, since he was in the office, camera technology has come a long way. The use of atmospheric reconnaissance aircraft is something that the U.S. has. SR-71. There's several high altitude aircraft that we have that we control the skies.
Sure.
They fly at hypersonic speeds. You're not going to catch them. That's just how it is. You won't catch them by the time they get back in American airspace, and that's right. That's the way it's designed. It's designed to be high altitude, so it can circumvent the globe like that, and so it can get the reconnaissance that it needs. And as soon as they are spotted, they're back in American airspace, and you can do nothing about it.
And I can see how this is quite something different. Like, you have a slow-moving balloon that is flying low to get. Because you have to fly it under a certain altitude so that you can maneuver it. Because once you get so high, the winds are too. You can't control a balloon at certain heights. So I think we should have shot the Deckham thing down over Alaska, but
yeah. It's not allowed. It's not allowed. You're in American airspace. Shoot it now.
Right.
And I don't care.
this leak that this happened all the time under the Trump administration, true or false, is an attempt by the Biden Department of Defense to cover for Biden.
And to cover for a mishandling, and oh well, when you shot it down, the information that you gained is now useless because it's sitting either at the bottom of the ocean or is completely contaminated with salt water, and you won't even be able to use the information that you gained. However, had you done it sooner and it landed on land, oh well, there's populous areas like where they shot it, where they found it. Sorry, where a civilian first found it. That's that strip of land in the middle of the United States that's massive that only 1% of the population lives in. There's nothing there. I've driven in South Dakota for hours before I saw another vehicle. I have driven in Alaska for hours before I saw another vehicle. Like, it's just bogus.
Yeah, and let's assume that that's true. Let's assume the best case scenario, they get to review all of the information that the balloon collected. China already has that information.
Yeah, that's true.
The goal is not to find out what they found. The goal is to limit what they find.
And to send a message. Send a message.
Yeah.
Like, no, you're not going to do this. We're America. We have the big stick. We're going to use it.
This is such a botch, and it is in line with the Afghanistan withdrawal. Like it's so poorly handled, and we look so pathetic and weak. And it grinds me so much. I'm embarrassed.
Yeah. I saw someone everybody's been talking about this on Twitter and whatnot, and someone said, "Oh yeah, took all week to do something just like y'all's president." It's like, yeah, you can now. The world, they talked about how much the world laughed at us because of Donald Trump. At least when they laughed at Donald Trump, he proved them wrong. Whenever he told Germany to stop depending on Russia for their oil and their natural gas and all their resources, and the Germans laughed at him. Then what happened? Found out, hey, maybe this man's right. Now people are laughing in America because we have nearly an octogenarian in the Oval Office who cannot think.
Yeah.
And I'm not using that as like, oh, he is a low IQ person. I mean, no, he is mentally degenerated to a point where he cannot think. And so now people are laughing at Americans going, that's who you put into office. And you knew the whole time that was his mental capacity.
Biden in his prime would have been this bad. Let's not kid ourselves. Biden has been a doof, especially on foreign policy, his entire life.
But he wouldn't have tripped falling up the stairs 3 times on the way to Air Force One 40 years ago. So at least he could get around without having to worry about tripping over the teleprompter wires, which is a serious concern now.
Yeah. Let me posit this question. If Biden, let's go full conspiracy theorist. If Biden were a Chinese plant, what would he be doing differently?
Right.
I mean, right. I'm not saying he's a Chinese plant. I think he's in the Chinese pockets. I know that. That's where his money comes from.
Well, yeah.
But
all America is. Anyway.
Yeah, but like, if he were working for our enemies, how would he be doing anything differently?
Yeah. Well, so we've talked about what we should have done concerning the balloon. Let's talk about why this balloon was so important. This is something that we as Americans and we as people who pay attention to these things really need to be aware of. What did we miss out on this week? What was not being talked about because we were so focused on this balloon? Any of you out there who watch mainstream media, did you hear anything about Hunter Biden this week? Because a huge scandal broke out this week concerning him soliciting sex from video sex from one of his employees just so she could get paid. Maybe if we're talking about a balloon, we're not talking about the president's derelict son. And I'm so sick of this charade about how, oh, he's just a child. The man's in his 50s. He's in his 50s. And he's soliciting sex from his employees so they can get paid what he already owes them. and picking up bags of cash from the Chinese, from the Russians while he's at it. I mean, so yeah, maybe we're covering up things. How about the fact that 40 million people don't know whether they're going to have water in a couple months because the Colorado River is running dangerously dry. So, whenever we see stories like this where everybody's attention is affixed to it, Democrats and Republicans, Libertarians, everybody's look at what else is going on. Because there's something the media doesn't want to talk about. So they're going to focus on a balloon floating in the sky.
I kind of wish that was it. That was why we were not covering the Hunter Biden. The more pessimist side of me thinks that people just don't care. Like
no.
we have
it's kind of like Donald Trump
length.
and the prostitutes or whatever that is baked into the cake.
Yeah, we have discussed at length how the Biden family is a crime family and Hunter is, everybody knows Hunter is the scum of the earth. Like, this doesn't surprise me in the least. So, and he's
but when the information came out, it came out so late that it was all just a part of who they were rather than when it should have been released. It should have been released in October before the 2020 election, and it wasn't. So now it's just, oh, this is how it is. But we're Christians, so we focus on things from a Christian perspective. If you go read 1 Timothy chapter 2 and you go read Titus chapter 1, you see that elders, overseers, bishops, whatever title you want to use, whatever word your translation uses, they are people who have to have children that are believers. And you look at deacons, and they are people who are supposed to be able to manage their household well. Because if the leaders of the church can't manage their own households well, God postulates that means they won't be able to manage the church well. The same thing goes for our national leaders. Their character matters. Now, again, I'm not electing them to tell me about my moral compass, but me as a person, I look at the way that Joe Biden has raised his son Hunter, and I go, why would we want that person leading the country?
I mean, I would say the same about how Donald Trump treats his wives, but
well, and that's why I didn't vote for Donald Trump
the first time. Yeah.
The first time, yeah. So because we're very consistent on this. We're right. Very consistent on this. So I mean, the point about the balloon is that they were covering up other stories. It gave them something to talk about. It gave us something to focus our attention on. For the 20 seconds that we needed to focus our attention on it and not look at something else. There were other stories going on this week that just conveniently couldn't get covered because of the balloon story. So whenever you see things like this happen, look for what else is going on. Look for what else is going on.
But the balloon story was worthy because it was such an embarrassment. Like, I mean, it could have been a nothing thing if they had done what they were supposed to do. They turned it into a national story by screwing it up so badly. All right. Well,
speaking of screwing things up so badly.
Oh my gosh, you will be.
It's a weekly segment.
All right. What have Republicans done to piss me off? So there's actually not all of these people are Republicans, but they're supposed to be on our side. So we're gonna go scorched earth on a couple people. First, we are going to talk about some House Republicans. So, any of you know about Ilhan Omar? She is the America-hating representative from Minnesota. She is from, she's from, where did,
Somalia?
Somalia, that's right. Somalia is a hole. Somalia is horrible. And she came here and hates it here. So,
right.
So Ilhan Omar is a racist. She is a garbage representative, and she hates America. So of course, Democrats saw fit to put her on the House Foreign Affairs Committee.
Yep,
because that's the best place for someone
who hates
America.
Anti-Semite. She's a rabid anti-Semite.
She's a real radical Muslim, so she hates the Jews. So
which is funny because if she was in a Muslim country, if she was in Iraq, Afghanistan, any places like that, she would be considered an apostate, and they would kill her immediately.
Yeah. For some of her.
Anyway, keep going. Sorry.
So House Republicans decided to remove her from the House Foreign Affairs Committee because of her robust craziness. And in response to that, you have a Republican from Indiana, Victoria Spartz, and I don't know if she was joined by anyone. She's the one getting my ire because she's the first name I saw. Indicated that she was opposed to this decision because she didn't want us to get in tit for tat kind of politicizing in committee appointments. She said that she appreciates the speaker's willingness to address legitimate concerns and add due process language to our resolution. Deliberation and debate are vital for our institution, not top-down approaches. I'm assuming she's talking about there was sort of just a top-down decision to remove Ilhan Omar. This is so typical, and it pisses me off so much. Get rid of every Democrat on every committee, because that is literally what Nancy Pelosi did. The January 6th committee has one Republican, Liz Cheney, and she's not even a Republican anymore. She's like an independent. Whatever.
It had to.
Well, okay.
Liz
Who
Cheney
was
and the other guy who was the other Republican who was a Democrat in sheep's clothing? Yeah. So we don't want to get in a tit for tat. I do. I mean, if you're not going to wield the power when it's given to you, why have the power at all? I mean, one of the reasons that America elected a Republican House was because of the January 6th committee, because they saw that a typical, just for those out there that don't know, a typical committee has 9 members. It has 5 majority members and 4 minority leaders. 4 minority members. And the majority gets to pick theirs, and typically the minority gets to pick theirs, and everybody agrees on them. But starting with the January 6th committee, that wasn't true. The Republicans put forward their 4 people that they wanted to be on the committee, and then House Speaker Nancy Pelosi came out and said, "No, we're not going to do that. We're going to put these 2 Republicans on there because I know they're never Trumpers," and that's how that committee was formed. And so, if that's the way we're playing the game now, let's play the game that way.
Yeah. Okay. So she also said this: 2 wrongs do not make a right. Speaker Pelosi took unprecedented actions last Congress to remove Representatives Green and Gosar from their committees without proper due process. Speaker McCarthy is taking unprecedented actions this Congress to deny some committee assignments to the minority without proper due process again.
What's the due process? Where's that in law?
Yeah.
Where's that in law?
You are Congress. You are not a court. You don't have due process. You are ridiculous. At war with the other people across the aisle. Okay? These are not your friends. And I hate the fact that so many Republicans make friends across the aisle. Stop it.
So that's just a fallacious argument. There is no due process. There's nothing in the Constitution about the way committees are to be formed. If you want to put something in the Constitution, I would be okay with the constitutional amendment stating how they should be formed. I have no problem with that because a constitutional amendment guarantees that both sides have to play by the rules. But when one side starts playing by the rules, wield the power when we give it to you. That's how this works, and that's how you come to an agreement, because they'll see that mutually assured destruction is not a good strategy, and they'll come together. And so that's what's going to go on here, and that's what they need to do. They need to have mutually assured destruction, just so they say, this isn't going to work. Maybe we need to make a constitutional amendment saying that House committees are formed this way. And I think the American people would be on board with that.
Well, she got shellacked for this, of course, because she's an idiot.
Good for her. Good for them.
And started walking this back on Tuesday. So you can still kowtow weak Republicans into doing the right thing. Another person who I'm grossly disappointed in twofold this past week is Jordan Peterson. Now, for those of you who don't know, we follow Jordan Peterson pretty closely. I have been at odds with him for some time about certain positions he has, especially on the use of anonymous accounts on social media to engage in discourse. But
he says that it's good because it shows. Yeah, I'm with you.
He says that it's bad. He wants anonymous accounts gone. I think it's good because I think right-wing people have to protect themselves in order to. Anyway, that's another discussion.
Anyway,
so In order to talk about Jordan Peterson, we first have to talk about Ron DeSantis and Christopher Rufo. Ron
Okay.
DeSantis being the governor of Florida, who we like on this show a lot. Christopher Rufo is a fellow at the Manhattan Institute,
Mhm.
which is a think tank.
Which is a think
And
tank, yeah.
yeah, and he has been responsible for the exposure of critical race and critical gender theory in
Mhm,
schools. He
mhm.
is, and his new project this year is to take on DEI programs at universities. Thank the Lord.
Good for
Um,
him.
and he has partnered with Ron DeSantis to do so. Ron DeSantis has actually appointed him to the board of New College of Florida.
Yeah, so this
And
is what I was gonna say. This is federalism at work. This is Ron DeSantis trying something in a now a blood red state, wasn't always, but now a blood red state like Florida to see how well it works, and then the rest of the Republican states can adopt it. I love it. Keep going. I'm sorry.
right, so Christopher Rufo wasn't the only conservative he appointed to the board of trustees for this college. He appointed, I think, all conservatives, and they are gutting the DEI program. Christopher is also investigating DEI programs at other universities in Florida, such as Florida State. He recently put out a report on it. And he also announced on Tuesday, let me go ahead and share this. New College of Florida Board of Trustees has voted to terminate the employment of the current president, directed the university to hire former Ed Commissioner Richard Corcoran, and instructed the administration to design a plan to abolish DEI entirely. So, DEI being
Okay.
diversity, equity, and inclusion. That is the moniker that your universities use to infiltrate the universities with communism and critical race theory. Um, Jordan, being a devout centrist, says, "Careful, Chris. I understand why you're doing what you're doing, but don't enable the government censors on either side."
All right,
Stephen, can you read
so
over this and tell me what's wrong with it?
I'm going to. I understand where Dr. Peterson's coming from. I think he's wrong. I don't think there's any censorship going on whatsoever. I think they're canceling programs that the school has no business spending money on, that tax dollars have no business going to. They are not censoring speech. They're not allowing the speech on campus. They're just not allowing it to be sponsored by the state dollars. Um, and like I said, I understand where Dr. Peterson's coming from. He is a man who has been in academia. He fought against what was that C-14, C whatever in
Yeah, the
Canada, the compelled speech
pronouns.
laws.
Yeah.
Yeah, the compelled speech laws. And so um, his point is always been to fight against government censorship. So it seems like this is an attempt for him to be intellectually honest and intellectually consistent. The problem that I see with it is that's not what's going on. They are firing somebody who has been underperforming. The current president has seen a lack and decline of student enrollment consistently. It's the same reason that the president at our alma mater, your mine alma mater, Del State University, is the same reason he got terminated. You don't do your job, you get terminated. Um, Now, gutting the DEI entirely is just not allowing my tax dollars to go to something they have no business going to. And
What?
so it's not apples and apples. It's really not. It's
And
apples and oranges.
it's a failure to identify what the problem is.
Yeah.
Like Jordan Peterson and all of these really IDW types, with the exception of Ben Shapiro, because he is right. He's the only legit right wing one. Um, don't recognize the problem. They don't recognize leftism as the source of our current state of the discourse. They don't recognize that it's like they're all constantly arguing not to ramp things up so that
Both sides
like
is them. They're
it's
they're
the
they're
yeah
constantly saying,
it's
well,
this
both
kind of like,
sides. Yeah.
well, okay, well, if you do this they're going to retaliate. They're already screwing us to the wall. Like, you have to gut them. And
Yeah.
this is no longer a how do we get back to a sense of normalcy issue. This is a friend enemy distinction issue.
Yeah, well,
That
and my dollars, and the point again, I love and appreciate Dr. Peterson and what he has done, but I think his failure is to understand that my dollars should not go subsidize DEI programs, and that's what they're gutting. This is not compelled speech. This is not government censorship. This
he
is not subsidizing DEI.
he wrote an essay that I watched him recite called DEI needs to DIE. I
Yeah,
don't understand the man. Like I think he's having mental episodes. I don't he's so inconsistent, and it is constantly to police the right from going too far.
maybe I'm gonna have to think about that.
I
I follow him. I'm not gonna say I follow him closely, but I follow a lot of his stuff, and so
okay, so
I'm gonna have to watch for that.
what is even worse is that so this is his message to the right: don't overstep, don't go too far. We don't want we don't want to trade. Basically, what he's saying is we don't want to trade one set of tyrants for another. Um,
Mhm.
I'm kind of okay with having a right wing tyrant for a little while.
You're okay with having a
Um,
benevolent tyrant for a while, yeah.
well, I mean, you got to course correct, and that's the only way it's going to happen. Um, but
That's
he's
I don't know if that's the only way that it's gonna happen.
it's the only way it's going to happen. But he also comes out with this on his podcast. When did Jack post this? This was the next day. I don't know if this was recorded the next day, but
If any of you have been particularly taken by this story today, you could always put pen to paper and write your congressman or your senator and let them know that you're not all that happy about the situation in Iran, and that if the politicians got their act together and were stalwart in their opposition to this fundamentalist, totalitarian, misogynistic, brutal regime, that maybe it could be pushed over, and that would be a nice object lesson to totalitarian tyrants everywhere in the world. If any of you have been particularly taken by.
so don't push too far to the right at home, but let's get involved in regime change in Iran.
So I will say domestic and foreign policy are different in kind. However, I don't think that I think that might have been a clip that was pulled out of a different context, and that it hasn't been pointed out to Dr. Peterson that DEI basically is totalitarianism. It's the leftist totalitarianism on the right speech. And
He
so I
might
think if
be
that
a
were pointed,
genius. He doesn't need that pointed out to him.
well, he's most definitely a genius. But I can't speak for all geniuses, but sometimes things have to be pointed out to people that they're being logically inconsistent, and then maybe he comes back with his genius intellect and says no, and here's why, and here's a good reason. I'm not trying to participate in both sidesism. He's wrong about the DEI in Florida. He really is. Like that what they are doing is exactly what needs to happen.
what I
Teach me
think
the subject matter and leave me alone.
what I think has happened is that he is an expert in a very narrow field, and
Yes.
he has left his lane.
Yes.
I
Just because someone has doctor in front of their name does not mean they are an expert in everything. We see this way too often all over the places whenever these media outlets source unnamed experts. So, they'll get an expert in biology to comment on social cultural issues. And it's like, stay in your lane. That's not what you do.
this is why we like him. He is an
Yep.
expert. He has helped so many, especially young men, get their act together. He understands what it means to be a man in today's society. He understands what is lacking in the male identity in today's society, and he has spoken to that, and it has helped so
Yeah.
many people. And then and we were kind of excited when he signed on with Daily Wire, but he sort of has stepped away from I think he still does a little bit of that, but he is doing more and more political commentary. And this is a period of wartime, political warfare, and he is not equipped. He is not the right person to be I mean, he's just wrong on this stuff.
He's
just
not
wrong.
dogmatic enough. Yeah, I mean, and I know he has temper issues, and I know a lot of people like to put YouTube videos up on Dr. Peterson destroys leftists.
He's
blah, blah, blah.
passionate. I'm not opposed to that. Like,
yeah, that's not what's going on. What happens is somebody asks him something that he is an expert about, and he basically destroys them using facts.
Like what we were talking about, the first issue that I had with him
but
was
yeah, like you said, he's not equipped to take upon the politics.
Yeah. Well, his first thing that I started taking issue with him is his crusade against anonymous accounts, especially on Twitter. He is, first of all, conflating anonymous and pseudonymous. Anonymous being those trolls that rip you to pieces in the comments section. Pseudonymous people being those that actually write essays under a pseudonym in order to participate in the discourse. Dr. Jordan Peterson, he lucked out. He got rich off of his cancellation. That never happens to other people. Like that doesn't happen.
But I will say he's not getting out of his lane when it comes to that. He's staying purely within the psychological lane. He goes, I know, I'm against this, and here's the psychological reason.
My point is he's not equipped to handle it. I think he's reading the comments and is taking them too personally. Like I think he's sensitive.
No.
So I don't know. I think he needs to get back to his roots and stick to what he is an absolute expert on. He thinks that's biblical commentary and understanding the human condition through. He thinks his expertise is biblical commentary and understanding the human condition through shared historical narratives. I would contest that. Yeah, I think he understands.
That's because he is walking around in circles of people who believe that biblical narratives are just that. They're narratives and they're not fact. And that's a problem. That is a huge problem. And when I say, if he were here, I can hear him right now in my head going, well, what do you mean by fact exactly? Like I can hear him saying that in my head. I mean, the events that you read about in the scriptures are truth. They happened the way they were. Methuselah lived to be 969 years old. That's what I'm talking about. And he runs around in circles full of people who don't believe that, and so they think everything's a narrative base. And that I have purposefully not watched his biblical lectures because I'm afraid that would take a lot of the prestige in his field that I have away from him, because that's not his field. And he'll even tell you he started doing that Genesis lectureship series. I don't know if he considers himself to be a Christian now, but he certainly was doing it before he ever considered himself to be a Christian. So I would say people don't take your biblical advice from people who don't even claim to be Christians. No. Like don't take your commentary advice.
He's just another example of someone who is so very smart that he has thought himself into ignorance. And I think these are just some smaller examples of ways that he's doing that. But all of this, don't overstep stuff. I have no patience for. With that, it is time to crack skulls, and I frankly do not care, because I believe it is inevitable that a tyrant is going to rise on the right. And it's not that I want vengeance or anything. I see it as an eventuality, a reality that will come to pass. America is not going to last in its current state forever.
No, I believe that. I don't know if libertarian is what's next, but we'll see.
We will.
All right,
see.
So conservatives against winning. Yeah, they. All right, so let's
why are we so addicted to losing? Like, really? Okay. Well, while we're on the subject of religion,
go for it.
Stephen brought this clip to my attention. I have not yet watched it, so I'm going to react to it live. Stephen, you will need to tell me when I have watched all of the necessary footage.
Sure. Sorry, I had to get out my Bible. It was in my bag.
You're good.
The wild thing about the Bible is that it's thousands of years old and people are still reading it. They're still reading this thing that was the framework for civilization.
You know what that tells you? That people are born to worship. We're born to worship people.
There's probably I think they've isolated that part of like human psychology. That's like something that we need.
Even the hardest man in the world will say, "Wow, you did a magnificent job." that was splendid or whatever. It's in our nature. Don't care how tough we are. Don't care how successful. It's in our nature to just worship.
Our friends at Manscaped are turning
Skip through that. That's an ad.
their favorite routines. The ultra premium new lawnmower is designed to cut hair on loose skin.
20% off, free shipping.
Yeah, 20%
code
off.
to hot boxing.
Mike
Yeah,
Tyson.
20% off.
Manscaped.
By typing in Mike
.com.
Tyson.
Code hot boxing at manscaped.com.
It's time to get wet
Manscaped.com.
with your new Manscaped shower routine.
Yeah, I remember, I think, reading something saying that the Bible is probably the most bought book ever, or like most like read book ever. It's pretty honestly
It's
amazing.
probably that, and then Harry Potter. Harry Potter's probably a strong second.
That's no cap.
Harry Potter might have the Bible beat.
When I look at,
We might want to look that up.
When you look-
Harry Potter might have the Bible beat.
the Bible's interesting.
That's how
because
gangster that lady is.
everybody is everybody got the Bibles is all different stories.
Well, Mike, that's what we were talking about, that
Stories.
the Dead Sea Scrolls and the podcast that we were doing earlier. That's where it gets really wild. That's thousands of years old. They found it in a cave in Qumran. They just found these scrolls that has versions of the Bible that never had seen before.
Well, if you know
That's not-
Constantine, he said, "Hey, you can put that in the Bible." No, you can't put that in the Bible.
Yeah,
No, like 300
yeah.
AD or BC, what, AD,
Whatever the New
Constantine.
Testament was, whenever
And
they
he
did
brought all
that,
the
yeah.
religious people, said, "No, you can't put that in the Bible." Yeah, you can put that. No, not that. Well, maybe that. Yeah, that's okay, but take that out.
The thing is, like, for sure, there.
Are we done?
Yeah. So
Okay.
I wanted you to talk about that for a bit.
Yeah, so I mean, it's just so weird watching. I mean, Joe Rogan's clearly not religious in any sense. I don't know what Mike Tyson's deal is, but
Muslim.
okay, I did not know that. I mean, they always get so close. But they are too wrapped up in their own understanding of things to make the leap. You know, the Bible's like thousands of years old, and people are still reading it.
Did
Could it
you
be
see
that
his
there's
face when he
truth
said
there?
that? Yeah.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, it's thousands of years old. Yeah.
Could it be that there is truth there? Could it be like, oh yeah, it's just because man was made to worship, like it was like it's a biological phenomenon. No, man was made to serve. This is embedded in every person. You will always serve a master, and Christians have elected to serve the true master of the universe. If you are not in service to him, you are in service to something. Be it your own intellect, be it your device of choice, you are a servant to something. These are basic fundamental principles that we all live by, whether you recognize them or not. I think people should keep talking about it because they can come to the truth. However, you never know how people will come to the truth. So I mean, I like that people like Joe Rogan talk about it.
I mean, he's the biggest podcaster in the world
Sure.
by far.
Yeah.
So the fact that he recognizes that the book is thousands of years old, people still read it, and he alluded to something ever so briefly. They still obey it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, they still listen to it. They still
It's not
believe
just
it.
yeah.
It's not. We're not reading
That's
it as an intellectual text. It's not like a historical document. It is the manual by which I live my life.
right.
He's also probably right in that Harry Potter's probably second, and I would say that
It is not.
simply.
And the only reason I know this, but
What is second?
Tale of Two Cities.
Oh, okay.
The Tale of Two Cities is like it by far the second. It's really cool.
That's fine. Like
Was that
I
Walt
like
Whitman?
that. All right, no, that's not Walt Whitman. That's Charles Dickens. I
No,
think.
it's Charles Dickens. Duh, dummy. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
Charles Dickens. Well, another British author.
Whitman was American.
No. Sorry, J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter. Charles Dickens.
Oh, gotcha.
Sorry, I was J.K. Rowling. I know Walt
J.K.
Whitman was
Rowling, and
Yeah.
I would say I would agree that Harry Potter if not the second most popular, is certainly up there if you count the books cumulatively.
Sure.
And it is because that is simply people, like if you look at Harry Potter fans, especially those that maintain their fandom into adulthood, that is them trading one religion for another.
Well, even further than that, the story of Harry Potter is a messianic story, is it not? The chosen one from birth, who had a miraculous life because he was able to live, who died and had to be resurrected before he could kill the almighty evil one.
Right. Okay.
Is
We're going
that
to get
not a
into
messianic
I
story?
can't pass up the chance to get into some literary analysis. However, Harry Potter is a messiah for the modern age because he is ultimately a victim of his
Yeah.
circumstances.
No, you're absolutely right.
not a hero that overcomes his hurt. He is
That's right.
things happen to Harry Potter. He does not happen to things.
That's right. Yeah.
So
And that is why he is so commonly read.
That is the difference between something like Harry Potter. I actually watched a video about this. It was great. Between Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
The people,
And that's the difference
people
between
in
the
Lord
theology of J.R.R. Tolkien and J.K.
right.
I mean,
Yeah. It's like people in the Lord of the Rings are fighting for something. And Harry is kind of like he is important by way of his victim status. Yeah. All right. Well, that was a
I
good
wanted
clip,
to
though.
before we moved on, I did want to address what Mike Tyson was saying towards the end there that is just blatantly incorrect. Constantine did not determine what books are in the Bible. The Council of Nicaea, which most people reference as being that event, is not who determined what books are in the Bible. People say the Council
Right.
of Nicaea in 325 AD is what determined what books are in the Bible. That is not true. We have record going back to the first century of what Christians considered to be canonical literature, and what we have in the Bible today, and it's the exact same. So they didn't show up. Constantine didn't determine what books were in the Bible, and I'm sure Mike Tyson holds that point of view because he's Muslim, and Muslims believe that the Bible, as Christians read it, has been tainted. That's why the true Bible is the Quran, which they're utterly incorrect about. That the promised lineage was they go on to claim the promised lineage was Ishmael and not Isaac. Again, something they're completely wrong about.
Sure.
So just I had to clear that up.
And that's fair. Yeah,
what
I mean,
he said there
'cause
at the end
you
is
never
wrong.
know what kind of ignorance we'll get out if we don't address it. I get that.
Yeah.
So we're gonna skip Taylor Swift being a moron, and move on to our last story of the day. I'm sure many of you have probably seen this video. If you have not, be warned. There's not R-rated content, but visually
graphic.
disturbing content coming. We are going to watch this video that has been making the rounds on Twitter. That is two little boys beating up on a younger girl.
I do need to correct you, Jeff. I believe that cornrow individual was a little girl.
Little girl.
I
Well,
believe that was the little sister. I believe the full context behind this story, and I know you're going to get into a deeper point.
Sure.
I think the full context behind this story is the little girl who was getting mercilessly beat had hit the other girl, and so Big Brother came in and could have killed her. Like that's not an overstatement. He could have killed her.
This is something that literally happened to me on the school on a school bus growing up. It's not uncommon.
It's totally not uncommon. Yeah.
It's disturbing to watch. And I think that while not uncommon, even back in the 90s, it's not getting any better.
Well, are you ready for this, Jeff?
Go for it.
That wasn't the first time that had happened on that bus route. A 10-year-old boy had been beat the same way on the same bus. All right, so okay, a lot of kickback has happened because of this video. I saw some people post and call the behavior animalistic, and they're like, "You're trying to dehumanize these people." No, that is animalistic behavior.
Yeah.
You are not behaving like a human being when you do that. You are behaving like an animal. So as someone whose mother was a bus driver, I can tell you that on my mama's bus, that never would have happened. As a matter of fact, I saw her kick kids off her bus route because they got in a fight. They were fighting. They opened up the back door. She pulled them out of the bus, got back on the bus and left them. Ran her route. When she came back around, they were still standing there. And she goes, "Do y'all want to act right now?" She lets them get on the bus and she takes them back home. That's the difference. The difference is proper raising and being able to discipline children. Did anyone say anything to my mother about pulling? I say children, they were teenagers, they were high school students fighting on her bus. Not a single person. They said, "Good for you." I'm sorry, I'm gonna let you talk about what you want to talk about. I have a lot to say about that video.
No, I mean, okay, and like I said, it has always existed, but the race relations in this country are getting to a point that we're not going to be able to go back. I feel like the 90s were probably as good as it was going to get. And
I concur.
Yeah, and like I said, we were visiting my in-laws this past weekend. Today we got to talking to some of my relatives who are teachers and who have a daughter in middle school, and apparently several of the black students thought that Black History Month was the time when you have to give something to the black students. Apparently it was very common around the middle school to say, "Okay, it's Black History Month. What'd you give me?" That happened in near where my in-laws are, in a school. The black principal had to sit down the entire grade and set them right.
But we still need to be pushing for reparations.
Yeah.
Like you said, this was not uncommon in the 90s, and I agree it's not getting better. The video that you saw was one that was attempted to happen to me. It did not. I was permanently removed from the school bus for standing up for myself. I mean, if we're going to talk about race, let's talk about race. I rode on a bus with 50 something other kids, and I want to say 7 or 8 of us were black. And that was just primarily, 7 or 8 of us were white. That was primarily because on my bus route, there was a very large trailer park that
Sure.
A lot of the students lived in. And so that's, they were all getting off there. That almost happened to me. Fortunately, my grandfather taught me how to hit somebody in the nose with an elbow. And because of that, I was deemed unsafe to ride the bus because I stood up for myself.
Right.
That happened. A family member, I don't want to get too specific here, but a very close family member of mine was homeschooled for a year, the first year of middle school, because of bullying like this. That's why I don't like the term bullying, because it's so flippantly used today. Like so and so, they're talking about me behind my back. They're bullying me. No, my family member was pushed down the bleachers at school because she was the new white girl. Like that's what happened. And I'm not sitting here, I'm not trying to take a victim mentality or anything like that. I'm just telling you, this is what we're talking about when we're talking about bullying. And then whenever media companies want to put this up, they go, "Oh, well, we can't talk about the races."
I've got it.
So they put up
Got
a little
here.
picture of a white boy hit. Yeah. Go ahead.
This is the story that local news put out.
Yeah.
The student was arrested.
The student was arrested, which rightfully so.
What's wrong with the picture?
Yeah. Well, Jeff,
happening.
That's just a stock image from Getty. That's not their fault. And that's the excuse that they're using.
Well, you could have posted a picture of the actual student.
You could. You absolutely could.
It's difficult to talk about, but this is happening overwhelmingly in one direction.
Yeah, pull up the statistics. white on black on white crime is 400% higher than white on black crime. That's a statistical fact. Now, again, stating the fact that most violence happens between races, like it's homogenous between most violence is most violence on whites is white on white, most violence on black is black on black, so on and so forth, all the way through the races. But when you start to look at the cross sections, black on white crime is 400% higher than white on black crime. That's just a statistical fact. And the policies that we're putting forward, the messaging that we're putting forward is the exact, we really thought we were going somewhere, and we thought we had achieved it in the early 2000s whenever we elected a black president. I mean, everybody I know thought we achieved it. And that's actually when it started to get worse. Yeah, that's when it started to get worse. That's when the identity politics actually started to come out. Because up to that point, we didn't worry about identity politics. We were going by Dr. Martin Luther King's standard of judge me by the content of character, not the color of my skin, right? But now we have taken a different turn with the intersectional politics that exists today, and we will not listen to someone unless they have the correct intersectional bona fides to back up what they're saying, and that's the exact opposite of what all of that was about. That's hard to watch, and I think it's hard to watch because we've experienced it. But it has to be talked about.
Yeah. Well, as always, we'd like to leave you on a cheery note here on Always Right with Jeff and Steven.
We had great segments. Why do we do this?
Yeah. Well, we figure most people are tuning out by now. So as always, thank you for listening. We will see what the next week has in store. How many spy balloons China decides to send over just to test
how many more spy balloons that show up over the next few weeks.
Yeah. So until then, everybody be safe. Do something smart with your life. I don't know, just general platitudes. Be better people.
Like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Smash
the like button. Sure. Yeah. Thank you guys as always, and we will catch you on the next one. Bye. Hey, you've just finished listening to an episode of Always Right. If you like what you heard and want to help support the channel, please be sure to like the video and follow us on Facebook or subscribe on YouTube. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, please consider rating the podcast 5 stars. And as always, please leave us a comment, whether hateful or glowing, as we appreciate the feedback. Tune in next week for another episode of Always Right with Jeff and Steven.